All right, we got some people joining here, waiting for Dave. Hopefully, all right, there. Okay, now we got it. Hopefully, Dave's gonna be popping up. We'll see his face soon. What's going on? I should be seeing his face. Huh. Kind of weird here. Don't know what's going on. Dave, can you hear me, buddy? There we go. All right, maybe he's back. Weird. Sorry, everyone who's watching. Except, there we go. I think we got it. David.
Yes.
All right, I can't see you right now.
I can't see you either. I mean, I can see you, but I can't. Yeah, I don't seem to have video here.
Very strange. Let me see if there's a setting that I have messed up here, Dave.
Okay.
No, there's no reason why you shouldn't be. Do you want to call back and reconnect again one more time, Dave? If not, we just move on from there. Dave? All right, sorry, everyone. We're having a little difficulty here. There you go. Dave's out. Dave's back. All right, there he is.
There you go.
All right. See, Dave's smiling face. How are you doing this morning, sir?
I'm doing fine. I'm doing really well this morning. Thanks very much. I just had a wonderful day yesterday with the Community Action Summit, and I was on a panel and made a presentation. I was on a panel with DuPage County Sheriff Jim Mendrick and DuPage County State's Attorney Bob Berlin and Judge McCluskey and Judge Reedy and Illinois State Representative Deanne Mazzocchi. So we had a wonderful time. There was about 150 people there and discussing mandates and law and some of the same things we're going to discuss today about the constitutional duties of the statewide elected officers of Illinois versus the officers with jobs that have the same names in the federal government, but the jobs aren't even close in some respects.
For sure, for sure. So for those of you who are just joining us, my name's Jack Lombardi, and who I have with me is Dave Shestokas. I said it better, didn't I? I got it right?
You got it right. You got it right. It takes a little while.
It only took me a year, Dave.
Yeah.
It only took me a year. But I got it, buddy. We got there.
Yes, we did.
Dave Shestokas, a little intro on who he is. He is he's an attorney, a Constitution attorney. Believe me when I tell you that man knows the Constitution from front to back. He's done a podcast, radio show. He's an accomplished author. One of his main books is Sound Bites. What was it again? It's
Constitutional Sound Bites, Jack, along with, and that one's about the U.S. Constitution. There's 150 questions and answers, Constitutional Sound Bites, and my book about the Declaration of Independence, creating the Declaration of Independence. both available on Amazon, and you can still get them in time for Christmas if you want. If you want to give the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence for Christmas and explanations of both those seminal American documents, I would encourage you to do so. Get them for yourself and give them as gifts for people that are interested in spreading knowledge about America, its founding, and its founding documents. I would suggest that they would be really, really good gifts for Christmas, and there's still time to get them. And so I would suggest that happen.
So,
but beyond all that,
you've also been an attorney for President Trump.
Yes.
Heavy with the election.
Last year I spent time with lawyers for Trump in Pennsylvania, and then I was in court in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, with Mayor Giuliani, and testified before the Pennsylvania Senate on what would be generally called aberrations in following election law by the people in Pennsylvania, particularly in Allegheny County and Pittsburgh, where I was intimately involved with what was going on there. So we're doing that, and currently I'm involved with the Illinois State Republican Party on their Ballot Integrity Committee, and I'm involved in that. And I'm also currently a candidate for Illinois Attorney General for next year. So that's been keeping me busy on a couple of fronts, and as I know you keep busy. I see that you've recently been traveling around to some hockey games in addition to everything else.
Yeah, well, I had to put my hockey dad hat back on. I made a point throughout my son's life. I was a single father for many years, to always be involved with my son. And I pretty much built my life around having the flexibility to be available to be there for him for his hockey or whatever he chose to do. And I thought it was a really important part of my parenting and relationship with my son. So yes, I was all over the state yesterday for hockey. We didn't win, but my son definitely played a very competitive game for sure. It's actually some of the most shots on him I've seen him take. He's a goalie, and I'm very proud of him because he dug deep, and I'm sure his legs were getting very tired, and he showed up every period, which was great. Definitely proud dad moment. Even though we didn't get the win, it didn't matter. I mean, I fought like hell, right? So, okay, so today what we're going to cover, and this is something, actually, Dave, your PDF is pretty awesome. I'm going to be honest with you. I was scrolling through it, trying to, bring myself up to speed. I'll be the first one to say, I have, okay knowledge in the Constitution, when it comes to state of Illinois and things like that, because there's so many levels to the Constitution. And so what Dave did is he prepared something, which is Illinois constitutional officers versus the United States officers. They sound the same, but they're very different. And Dave, I'm going to let you take the floor here and go with this. This is definitely well prepared, and I really appreciate all the time and knowledge you always bring to our meeting here so we can help the people best understand what's going on.
Help folks understand what's going on, Jack. That's exactly right. As you mentioned, there's a lot of people working to study the United States Constitution, and we certainly encourage them to do that. But that you shouldn't really stop there, because each state has its own constitution, and frequently those kinds of those state constitutions have implications, of course, in how we live and how our states are governed. And I know this has happened to you, and probably during the course of your campaign for Congress. But I'm also, from time to time, have been introduced while I'm running for Illinois Attorney General. I've been introduced as a candidate for United States Attorney General, for candidate for State's Attorney in various other locales and things like that. So it's worthwhile for people to know what the various offices are and what the various differences are. And that is defined both related to the federal officers, as defined originally in the U.S. Constitution, and then supplemented by laws passed by Congress. And the same situation applies to Illinois. that is defined by the Illinois Constitution in the first place, and then supplemented by laws passed by the Illinois legislature. And the Illinois Constitution, actually, one of the huge differences is, though, that, of course, the president and vice president are the only two nationally elected officers of the United States government. Illinois Constitution, in Article 5 of the Illinois Constitution, Section 1, has a definition of a set of officers. And strangely enough, Illinois elects 6 officers that are elected to statewide office, as opposed to just the only 2 that are the only 2 nationally elected officers of the federal government. Those 6 officers include the governor, the lieutenant governor, the Illinois Attorney General, which I'm running for, the Illinois Secretary of State, the comptroller, and the treasurer. And they're elected by the electors of the state across the state. And it's kind of important to know that, because that has a huge difference in implication as we're talking about the circumstances regarding, say, just the the president and the governor. They seem to be the same thing in some respects, but one of the huge ways they're not is the fact that the president is defined in Article 2, Section 1 of the United States Constitution, and it just indicates that the executive power shall be vested in the president of the United States of America, then tags along with the vice president, and they're going to be elected for a term of 4 years. It goes on to explain a variety of things about the process of electing the president, but I think the next portion is almost it's incredibly important. The fact that the governor of Illinois is defined in Article 5 of the Illinois Constitution, and it says that the governor shall exercise the supreme executive authority of the state of Illinois, which is really kind of weird. Apparently, Pritzker takes that fairly literally in some respects, but even though the governor is the head of the executive branch, each one of these other officers, unlike in the United States government, each one of these other officers is independently elected and has independent responsibilities and independent duties, that they do not have to get permission from the governor. They don't. They're not governed by the decisions of the governor. So while the state constitution talks about the governor's job in terms of supreme executive authority, it's not really the reality. So we're going to talk about that a little bit as time goes on. One of the other things, of course, is we have a lieutenant governor as opposed to a vice president. Those seem to be similar kind of circumstances. Lieutenant governor and vice president sounds like the same thing in some respects. In one respect, they're similar, and that is that if something happens to the governor were to pass or resign or be impeached, no longer serving as the governor, the lieutenant governor would in fact become the governor. Just like if in similar circumstances the president either dies or is removed from office by way of impeachment or resigns, or there's certain other kinds of things where the president can be removed temporarily. The vice president becomes either president or acting president in a similar situation. But what's interesting different is that the vice president has a constitutional duty and authority to be, in some respects, a member of the Senate, in addition to being a member of the executive branch, and has duties to, if in fact the Senate, right now, the United States Senate has a tie with 50 Republicans and 50 Democrats. And when, if a piece of legislation or a decision comes up to the Senate and the vote is tied 50-50, the vice president, and who is serving in the office at the moment is Vice President. I'm not going to say the name and the office in the same term, because for any number of other distinguishing reasons. But Kamala Harris would cast a deciding vote, breaking the tie. The lieutenant governor of the state of Illinois does not have any authority in the legislature at all. She does not have any authority to do anything with the legislative body. Doesn't serve that similar purpose. So a tie in the Senate of Illinois, the Illinois Senate, and the Illinois General Assembly. If there's a tie there, the whatever it is that they are voting on, whether it's a piece of pending legislation or say an appointment of the governors, that a tie means that it fails. So when something ties in a legislative body, it fails, and so there is no tiebreaker like there is for the Senate of the United States with the vice president. And strangely enough, the lieutenant governor also has certain other statutory duties. Serves on a variety of boards. Is chairman of the Illinois Rivers Council. There's a couple of the other appointments for the lieutenant governor. So those jobs sound alike, but they're not even alike because of the way they're executed. The only thing that they share is they succeed to the higher office if the other office is vacated. I think people, we talk about constitutions, but people seldom look at their state constitution. So you can see even right at that very first level, lieutenant governor versus vice president is hugely different. At the very first level, the president versus the governor, the president appoints every other executive officer underneath him, but the governor does not. The governor has these independently elected offices that essentially he has to do business with. He doesn't, if the Attorney General of the United States is appointed by and serves at the pleasure of the president. So the Attorney General of the United States can in fact be removed by the president. The Attorney General of Illinois has is separately elected, independently elected, and owes no duty to the government. In fact, that duty is to the people of the state of Illinois, which I think is something we're going to talk about a little bit more. So I think this is important. I talked about this yesterday at the summit with the various officials and things like that. And so we got a lot of. Strangely enough, one of the panelists, who's longtime attorney himself, and was speaking to me afterwards, and I'm not going to name any names, but said, "Holy cow, I didn't know that." They're longtime lawyers serving in official government capacities, and seemed to be shocked that while Lisa Madigan was the Attorney General and her dad was the Speaker of the Illinois House, that there was actually a conflict of interest between the Attorney General and the Speaker of the House. They went, "Holy cow!" And we allowed that to proceed. And those are important things. One of the reasons that I'm running is in the last couple of years I've been representing the Illinois Conservative Union against. We sued the Illinois State Board of Elections, and all we asked the State Board of Elections to do was to provide the data, the voter data, to be able to determine if the State Board of Elections is properly maintaining the voter rolls here in Illinois. And of course, they told the ladies from the Illinois Conservative Union, among them the chairman there being Carol Davis, who is just a huge mover and shaker when it comes to these matters, but she was joined by 3 of her other board members. They told them, "No, you can't have this data." And they are entitled to that data under the National Voter Registration Act. And as we ultimately wound up suing them, I discovered that, in fact, it was the Illinois Attorney General that was saying the Board of Elections didn't have to follow the law. And most people that are listening are probably a little familiar with the fact that Senator Bailey filed a few lawsuits, and he filed in Clay County where he lives, and that got dragged out of Clay County into Sangamon County, and they dragged him up and down. There was a Romanian church that they removed a case from the county where the church was and moved it into federal court. There's a number of parents that are suing for Department of Public Health and Board of Education on different kinds of issues. And in each one of those instances, it's the Illinois Attorney General that is opposing the citizens of the state of Illinois, as opposed to bringing them in, sitting them down and saying, what's your legitimate grievances? By the way, you are the guys that elected me, so I'm going to try and resolve what your grievance is with the government, as opposed to saying, no, we're going to drag you up and down the courthouse steps. We're going to, this last week, we just had a situation with the conservative union lawsuit where we won 2 motions to dismiss that they had in federal court. And now now they're wanting to conduct discovery, and they've sent some interrogatories asking Carol Davis and her friends, have they ever been convicted of a crime in the last 10 years? If so, what crime was that? Can you provide us with the details of that? Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right.
Why is that even relevant?
It's not. It's not, and that was ultimately the answer to their interrogatory. Is it wasn't relevant. They asked where they lived for the last 10 years. They asked where their jobs and their employment and all kinds of other kinds of, whether there's any civil suits. All the Attorney General's office is trying to do is run these people up and down the courthouse steps, trying to get them tired. And in many respects, I know that some of the parent groups have hired Tom DeVore to do things regarding some of their complaints, both with mandates and masks in schools and these kinds of issues. And the Attorney General is just running them up, trying to run up their bills so that they, I'm not against Attorney DeVore making an appropriate living, and if he's doing the work, he needs to be paid. But the Attorney General's office is just trying to run up the bills, as opposed to sit down and say, okay, what are your grievances with the government? And let's see what we can work out. And that's what the Attorney General should be doing. The Attorney General of Illinois is represented by and has the first duty in the Illinois Attorney General Act of representing the people of the state of Illinois, unlike the Attorney General of the United States. The Attorney General of the United States is appointed by the president, serves at his pleasure. And so since the president can remove the Attorney General, if in fact the Attorney General were to conduct the office in a way that the president disagreed with, he can fire him,
Yeah.
So,
I get where that could go and how that position could be used as a tool by the administration. So okay, the Attorney General of Illinois is supposed to work for the people, and he's elected by the people, however, has been working against the people because we can't get the law that's on the books to actually be enforced in many different instances because it doesn't serve the better interest of their own party.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Jack, because they are just executing. They're executing the governor's policies as opposed to doing what the Attorney General and while I was a state's attorney as well. Those particular jobs have an unusual place in the law and an unusual place in the legal community. Their sole job is in fact to justice. When you represent a private client, your job is to be a zealous advocate on behalf of your client. Like Mr. DeVore should be for the parents that he's representing, like I like to think I am for the Illinois Conservative Union. We're supposed to be zealous advocates for our clients. But when you are in the situation of either a state's attorney or the Attorney General, your job is in fact to achieve justice, not to win. Okay, it's not to win, because winning means it's just an entirely different place to be. That's like assuming that you were to go to Congress. Your job isn't to represent the greater good as a whole. Your job would be to represent the people of Illinois. I believe that's the 14th district that you're running for.
14th district.
Yeah. And so you should be a zealous advocate for for the people that elected you,
Mm-hmm.
of the 14th district. Your job is not to determine that whatever you're doing should be good for somebody in Orange County, California.
Right.
It should be good to it should have obtain an appropriate result for the folks in the Illinois 14th congressional district, and that's what your duty is. So it's an entirely different thing that people don't understand, because the U.S. Attorney General gets all the publicity, and he is supposed to be an advocate for the policies of the president in some respects. That's a little more nuanced job, but they are the executors of the policies of the administration. So it's an entirely different circumstance.
I have a question for you, going back to Illinois.
Yes.
So we have state's attorneys who don't want to prosecute for whatever reasons. I'm not even going to go down the political positioning reasons. Now, a state's attorney could say, hey, hold on one second. Right? The attorney general, I'm sorry, could say, hold on one second. I think we should look at these cases, because there seems to be some state's attorneys who don't want to prosecute on crimes that probably should be looked at as a crime. So so if you were elected, what would be your position? So let's just talk about crime, right? So crime, violent crime is just rampant right now. However, it's not being prosecuted. Many of these criminals are being let out on cashless bond or something so low anyone can afford, which is ridiculous. They turn around and do another crime or another violent crime. And these are the type of people that we actually need in jail, because society's not safe with them running around. Could your office, when elected, like, how's that work, Dave?
Yeah, Jack, that's another situation that people don't understand. There are particular processes in certain areas of criminal law that allow the attorney general to make a request of the local state's attorney. It's originally a request to prosecute a particular crime, or in some situations a particular class of crimes. And if the attorney general, if the state's attorney either responds, no, we're not going to do that, or fails to respond within 60 days, the attorney general's office has the authority to prosecute such crimes itself. So the attorney general has, in some respects, what one would call a supervisory authority over the attorney generals. The most egregious examples. Well, there's, we know about the smash and grab things that are going on
Right.
all over these days, and that's going on particularly in Cook County because the state's attorney Kim Foxx refuses to prosecute, or will not call anything under $1,000 stolen out of a store a felony, whereas the Illinois state law defines a $300 retail theft as in fact a felony. And so but Fox declines to do that, and there's something called prosecutorial discretion that gives her the ability to do that. But one of the more, and that's responsible for a lot of the people that are going in stealing stuff at will. And I think they probably bring a calculator and go, okay, I got $990 worth of stuff, and
that's what seems to be happening. Yeah.
Yes.
And then you have you have the gun violence, like Dave. So I have a lot of family cousins who are CPD officers, even higher up, right? Even some white shirts. And they tell me all the time, Jack, the laws are there on the books. They just won't enforce them. And people say, oh, we need more gun laws, more gun laws. I mean, they're already there. They're just not enforcing them to appear like we would need more gun laws. I mean, what's your thoughts on that, if you want to comment?
No, I'd be happy to. And that's exactly, the officers are exactly correct. But then we wind up with this other problems with officers. I was talking to a CPD officer last night, and she was in a store, an Ulta cosmetic store, when a group of folks came in with bags and just emptied the bags emptied the shelves of the cosmetics and other things into the store while she was standing there. And she was she had her weapon on her and whatnot. But the store management made an announcement to everybody that just be calm and be quiet. They're not going to get involved in that. And the officer, unfortunately, was in a position that she herself, if she drew her weapon and tried to interdict this crime, she put herself at risk of being accused of a crime in today's society, in today's environment. So she was in a position to literally stop that crime, but she was not in a position to put herself and her own career and safety and perhaps freedom at risk in interdicting that crime because of the ideas of the state's attorney. If she conducted herself in one of these group of guys got shot, they'd probably charge her with some sort of assault and battery, aggravated battery, attempted murder. And so that's why this goes on, because it's twofold. They're not prosecuting the criminals, and they're not defending the police themselves. And so they're putting the police in trick bags.
Dave, just think about the police officers I'm related to or the ones I'm friends with. They're a different type of person. I mean, they get into this because they genuinely, in their heart, they really do care about protecting the innocent, especially, right? Many of them I know, right?
Yes.
They're like that. So it works against who they are just as a person and how they feel like they fit into society, because they don't feel like they can actually protect the innocent anymore. It's quite, I could see where it becomes troubling for many of them and why they're having emotional or psychological issues these days, because again, like I said, it works against them. And right now we're rewarding lawlessness in our society, especially specifically here in Illinois, in some other states that are kind of, like Illinois. I'm going to keep out of the party out of it. It's really sad state of affairs. And moving forward, I do believe, and I'm not going to speak for you, but I do believe that we need to invest in a more, in a society that respects law and order.
Yeah, I was, as I mentioned, I was with Sheriff Mendrick yesterday, and he was talking about where some of the defund the police activities, and he said, there's personnel, there's benefits, and there's training is basically what they spend their money on. And if they cut back on police, what they cut back on is training. And so the police officers that are the new police officers are ill-equipped to handle these situations because of they don't really cut back on personnel. They don't really cut back on benefits to those personnel, but they do in fact cut back on training for those personnel. And it's the training that enables them to help keep us safe. And so these are the dangers of some of those defund the police movements. But when it goes back to things like what Kim Foxx is doing, it's fairly famous that there's two relatively recent incidents where people actually died. And one included a fight, originally a fist fight in a driveway that one guy ultimately brought out a knife, killed the other guy, and Fox declined to prosecute, saying it was mutual combat. And there was another situation where people were driving down the street and they exchanged gunfire with some people in the house. Somebody got killed, 4 other people got shot. Fox declined to prosecute, saying it was mutual combat. These are the kind of circumstances that, in fact, the Attorney General could go in and take over such a case with their own investigators, investigate that situation, and then and take over such a case. And I would like to think that having that kind of oversight of rogue prosecutors would make such rogue prosecutors take their jobs more seriously when it comes to protecting the people, because it's just like the whole Jussie Smollett business. We have to remember that Kim Foxx declined to prosecute him, and ultimately that turned out to be a prosecution. It turned out to be a guilty plea. That prosecution was not conducted by Kim Foxx's office. It was conducted by a special prosecutor appointed by a court with the intervention of a private citizen former appellate court justice Joan O'Brien, and she had petitioned the court for a appointment of a special prosecutor. So anybody that thinks that Smollett's justice came at the hands of Kim Foxx is sadly mistaken. And so,
so you're telling me a retired judge had to get involved and intervene and work our legal system just for this man to, who clearly it's been proven it was a hoax, to be held accountable?
That's exactly right. And Smollett did damage to all kinds of people. And Lord only knows, from what I understand, there was about 20 detectives working on a case because it was so high profile to begin with. And Lord only knows how many homicides did not get responded to or investigated or other kinds of things because these guys were tied up on this Smollett business. And it certainly harmed individuals who are the victims of legitimate hate crimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
all the damage that Smollett did. Yeah.
It delegitimizes, instances where people were victims of hate crimes, and it's going to make it harder for people who are legitimate victims at following a case like this, specifically, nearly after, right? Because how people are going to view it. There's so many levels of how wrong what he chose to do. There's just so many levels how wrong it is. In so, from burning up resources, being a high profile case, down to actually, mocking legitimate cases of hate, right? Because of whatever gender, race, whatever religion, whatever. In those cases, always, I'm very adamant that I'm prejudice. When I see prejudice, I feel it bothers me a lot when you see prejudice. So when in a lot of hate crimes will be based off of some sort of prejudice notion, right? So unfortunately, this guy mocked all that, and it's definitely, I think, for most people, kind of infuriating, to see that. Now telling me that a private citizen, a retired judge, had to get involved to make this happen. I mean, that's ridiculous. It makes me question, what is Kim Foxx actually doing to keep people in Cook County safe? And it doesn't seem like a whole heck of a lot.
No, and those other situations where people actually got murdered, literally murdered, and she declined to prosecute such cases. Those are the kinds of cases that, in fact, the Attorney General can intervene in, and because the Attorney General doesn't have unlimited resources to prosecute crimes all across the state. I mean, while Fox's office has 1,000 lawyers, the Attorney General's office has 400 lawyers across the state. And so, but nevertheless, when there's a situation like that, the Attorney General can and get involved and do things to protect citizens that the state's attorneys are not protecting. And so those are things that people don't know about that office because it's not been utilized properly. All those kinds of authorities have not been utilized. The authorities of that office have been utilized to protect the government. So that's and again, that's completely different than the United States Attorney General. And I think that's kind of what we want to talk about a little bit more. So we'll get a little bit back on track. But Illinois. And by the way, the Illinois Attorney General is the next in line after the Lieutenant Governor to succeed the governor. It's interestingly enough, in the federal system, the Speaker of the House is in line after the Vice President. In Illinois, the Illinois Attorney General is in line after the Speaker. After the Lieutenant Governor. So that's another difference between the two systems. One of the bigger ones is the Illinois Secretary of State. We've got a United States Secretary of State, and then we've got an Illinois Secretary of State. They couldn't be more different, even though they hold the same name. When it comes to the job. First of all, the United States Secretary of State, of course, again, is appointed by, serves at the pleasure of the President of the United States with the advice and consent of the United States Senate, but is responsible for foreign affairs, executing U.S. policy around the world, around the globe. They also do things like manage passports and other activities in terms of international relationships, negotiate with foreign governments. But the U.S. Secretary of State's duty is basically to execute the policy of the United States when it comes to foreign policy. And of course, the policy of the United States is set by the president. So it's the Illinois Secretary of State does something entirely different, right, Jack?
Yeah. You know what I think is best here is that people really understand the positions and what they hold and who they can elect, and why it's so important when they go in and they're going to elect someone and they see the name there, what the role is behind that. Because then I think many of the voters, many of the constituents throughout Illinois will start to understand where their vote counts. They won't just be filling something in. They understand where their vote counts, because they'll look at the position, whatever position we're talking about, and they'll say, okay, well, this is where, if they believe this is where they failed us, and this is how we hold them accountable. I think a lot of the people that I've spoken with through my campaign, if they want some accountability for certain things, they don't feel safe, election, whatever their topic is that's important to them, they do want accountability. In most of that accountability, they talk to me, I'm running for a federal seat, and I have to explain to them, most of that accountability is when they actually vote on Illinois, the different positions in Illinois, like governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, things like that, right? So that's where they can hold people accountable. So if they don't like what's happened or how the pandemic was managed, if they don't like the crime, this is the seat you're running for would be one to consider you as their pick of somebody who would do a different job than the job that's been done. So I think it's incredibly important that the viewers understand how powerful their vote really is, which is going to bring them to the question of how secure is their vote. But do you want to touch on that briefly? Because I know you've been heavy in that, and people, I think people have more reason to trust their vote here in Illinois than they believe right now. That's my opinion, at least.
Yeah, I think you're correct. I think the reasons to trust their vote are getting better each and every day. There's a lot of people working on that. And I think what we might want to do, Jack, is devote next week just to that. And we'll just perhaps finish running up through the offices and the differences, and just so they have some understanding, because it's important to understand what the offices do, so that when a candidate says, well, I'm running for such and such, and I'm pro-life, does it matter that the Secretary of State of Illinois is pro-life? It's nice if he agrees with you on being pro-life and whatnot.
Yeah, doesn't seem like that he's not in a legislative position. Right. He's only here to enforce the laws that are on the books anyways.
Yeah, does that have anything to do with managing whether or not a truck driver is properly qualified to get a CDL?
No. Yeah, that's the wrong office on that one. Yeah, and that's where I think with Secretary of State, you did want to talk, I believe from our conversation, what would be the role of Secretary of State? Because that's another seat that I believe is up. It's been brought up to me a couple times, people talking about it here in Illinois. What's that role? Because like you said, we were joking, you said, it's more than just going to get your license.
Yeah, it's not just because it's not just your driver's license. Although the Secretary of State's office does in fact manage driver's licenses and keeps records related to just simple driver's licenses, but it also executes the policy and regarding all your other kinds of licensing, whether in terms of vehicles, whether it's a motorcycle license or whether it's a CDL license. They're responsible for, say, hiring the personnel to do the testing, in which case it should be somebody that has some skills in management. It should be management skills that is in charge of the Secretary of State's office. They're in charge of keeping the records for the state. The official records, they manage 20 other departments and their record keeping and execution of the laws. So see, this is where when this Illinois Constitution says the governor is the supreme executive authority, it's not exactly right. The governor doesn't get to appoint or hire or fire the Secretary of State. The Secretary of State is elected by the people of the state of Illinois. And if somebody says they're running for that office, you should ask them, well, what's your management experience? What's your skills when it comes to hiring and firing? Are you going to employ Indeed.com to sort out your people? Those should be the question for somebody running for Secretary of State. And I don't want to diminish the importance of somebody's philosophical or political beliefs in terms of whether you agree with them or not. But that doesn't mean they're going to be qualified to keep the records, hire and fire the appropriate people to see to it that when we go to get a driver's license, we get customer service as opposed to standing in long lines at the office waiting to get a sticker for our license plate, right? It should be somebody what's that?
Oh, I'm sorry. I accidentally had myself on mute, which is something we all know about if we've had to deal with the Secretary of State. And oftentimes I've questioned who's managing this joint. This is awful,
Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't know a person in Illinois that's thrilled about having to go to the Secretary of State's office because it's usually it's messed up. Oftentimes it is. But yeah,
I guess they have over 4,000 employees in that office, and historically it's been the major office for patronage jobs for the party in power, and that is among the reasons why the service in those places is not the best in the world, because many of the workers are chosen for political reasons, to reward political workers, reward people that knocked on doors for the Secretary of State, not necessarily somebody that's skillful at running a computer and determining whether or not your driver's license is up, or what you need to do to get a sticker on a license plate for a car that's at the moment garaged out of state. There's a lot of things that are important that should be part of the training, but those kinds of skills should be part of the recruitment process for people that are working the office. But they have not historically been. They've historically been patronage places for people that have done political work. And
the back scratching, good old boy network, instead of vetting them to find the best work candidates, it's just using them as political pawns. And it's no secret. I mean, it's a very poorly managed office, and it's very clunky. And I'm sure there's other offices in government that have much of the same. They're not really hired because they're the best fit. They're appointed because of favors, and their offices run like they ran awfully. They run like they're crap. I mean, I know of a couple too as well. So I didn't know that about Secretary of State. But that makes sense. I think there were some instances years back where they had political favors and people doing stuff they shouldn't have been doing. But a lot of people went to jail too. So at least there was some accountability there.
Well, that's exactly right, and that ultimately is what led to George Ryan going to prison, because two things were going on while he was Secretary of State that they didn't find out till he was governor. One of which had to do with the fact that they were shaking down the employees for political contributions. You're supposed to take part of your salary, and because your job was a reward for political work, you're supposed to take part of your salary and make sure you contribute to the George Ryan campaign. And then the other aspect of it is that there was a family who was killed. I think 4 of the 5 members of the family were killed in an accident driven by relative to a trucker that had gotten paid for getting his CDL from the Secretary of State's office here in Illinois. And he was unqualified to be a CDL driver, but in fact had greased the palm of somebody or a company greased the palm of somebody to be able to allow him to have this license where he's supposed to have the skills to operate such a vehicle on the street. And he did not maintain the vehicle properly, and a family from Wisconsin died as a result of it.
That was a P&M problem, preventative maintenance issue. I remember that because remember I used to own a dump truck company. I do remember those times, and that was a long time ago. I think that's around right before I got my CDL or somewhere around. I still have my CDL, by the way. I always kept it. I figured, if push ever came to shove, even though I'm an entrepreneur and I needed a job, I still have my CDL. Driving trucks, I did that for years. But yeah, there's a lot of guys from someone that hired a lot of truck drivers through the years. And I had about 73 subcontractors underneath me. I'm telling you, there's a lot of them don't belong behind the wheel. Preventative maintenance and things like that. There's a joke with truckers is that the state police are your silent partner because they're always pulling you over, DOTing you. But there was a lot of, no matter what, even if it's stressful to be a trucker and they have to comply by more rules, they're still for good reason because truck parts are very big, and if they come off and hit a car or a motorcycle, that could cause a big problem. And that case that you're talking about was specifically one of those. That was a preventative maintenance. I remember that. But I mean, that's good that there was accountability there because it pushed the law in the right direction to keep motorists safe on the road.
Well, the problem is, Jack, the law was already in place, but there was a corruption of the law by people taking bribes to ignore the law that was in place. Again, there's all kinds of, the law was already in place, and I don't even know if it changed in respect to what happened there. And it's unfortunate, not unfortunate, it's a tragedy that people actually died because of mismanagement in the Secretary of State's office. So if you are winding up in a situation where there's people that are candidates for Secretary of State and they're talking about the fact that they're pro-life and they're for smaller government and smaller limited government and things, who cares?
That's not important. That's not the qualifier. So what is the qualifier, Dave? I mean, how do we qualify that type of candidate?
Well, certainly in an ideal world, you're going to want somebody that's going to say, I have this kind of management experience. I have this kind of experience in terms of determining employees and candidates for jobs. I have this kind of experience in terms of maintaining or having skills regarding, say, computer systems so that people get good customer service. There's a lot of important ministerial skills and experiences that the manager of that department should in fact have, and it shouldn't be just political skills in terms of getting elected. Those are the kinds of questions when somebody's running. Don't ask them if they're pro-life. I mean, I'm just using that as a big example, but you should ask them, again, do you have management experience? And so whether or not you've been in the executive or in the private sector, what you would look for in employees, the kind of things that you would utilize to kind of test you would utilize to fill the jobs. And so that kind of dedication, those are the kind of things you should ask somebody running for Secretary of State, not whether they're for limited government or they believe in the Constitution. We hope that they do, but you know what? There's somebody else to enforce that. That would be the Attorney General. So,
the seat you're running.
So that's why it's worthwhile what we're doing, talking about those jobs. And of course, obviously, the Secretary of State has nothing to do with affairs with other states in terms of like conducting the foreign affairs of the state of Illinois. They do have some duties in terms of executing what they call interstate compacts. There's agreements between the states to honor each other's driver's licenses and cooperate in those kinds of situations. Honor each other's trucking licenses, do situations. So there's some relationship, but actually all the Secretary of State even there is doing is ministerial work under the advice of the Attorney General, who would and say this is your duties under the compact that we have with Indiana when it comes to working on working out the details of how the tollway works between Indiana and Illinois, you know. So the Secretary of State is strictly executing the law, is not interpreting the law. And so you want somebody with managerial skills, and that's what they should tout when they're running for that office. And so that's something to think about. So when you say U.S. Secretary of State and Illinois Secretary, they're not even close.
Two apples and oranges.
Yeah, apples and oranges. And we get to vote for one. We don't get to vote for the other.
Right. Well, and that shows how much power the Illinois voter really has. And I do believe that Illinoisans are getting more invested into their into the voting system, into who they're voting for, into the candidates. I do see it, or maybe I notice it more. I mean, I'm trying to be fair, but I do see more conversation about local politics and the importance of it. And Dave, we only got a couple more minutes here. Did you want to comment anything on county board, or we just want to stick to our?
We'll stay with it. Just I want folks to remember there's two other constitutional offices. One's treasurer, and the other one's comptroller. And
what do they do, Dave?
Well, the comptroller is actually responsible for paying the bills of the state of Illinois. And the treasurer is responsible for managing the money. So you've separated those two things from one another. The treasurer is to issue money based upon the decisions of the comptroller to pay the bills, but the treasurer still otherwise manages and invests the money. So that's again a situation where if somebody's running for treasurer, you would want somebody that has, investment experience.
Right. Financial, understands how a balanced budget, understands accounts receivable, those kind of things. Yeah, financial background for sure.
Absolutely. And for somebody with a running for comptroller, in an ideal world, you'd want a CPA. You'd want somebody that has an accounting background, that knows how to, in the first place instance, manage the books and can overlook the other executive agencies to see if, in fact, their books are balanced. So each one of these offices has specific duties that require different skills. And when people are running for those offices, you should, and you see them, and they are running for these offices, and they have a Q&A. You don't have to ask them about balancing the federal budget, right?
Right.
You don't have to ask them about redistricting.
Yes.
You ask them. If you ask the attorney general, do you have experience prosecuting crimes?
Probably important skill set to have. Yeah.
And you ask the Secretary of State what your management skills are, and what kind of customer service experience do you have? When it comes to the comptroller, are you a CPA? Do you have accounting experience? Do you have accounting background? And the treasurer, do you have investment experiences? Do you know how to manage vast sums of money in the billions of dollars? These are important things, and none of the stuff that people talk about as issues, generally speaking, have to do with any of the jobs except perhaps governor, lieutenant governor, and attorney general. The rest of the jobs don't require a philosophical basis, but require specific skill sets. And it's worthwhile for people when people are putting themselves up as candidates for those jobs to ask them about those skill sets. So I think that's important. And so when we resume, I think next week it'll be worthwhile talking about ballots. I'm having another meeting tomorrow with the State Central Ballot Integrity Committee, and so we'll talk about that next week. We'll spend some time with that. And if you want to get into what county boards do, that's I'm certainly would certainly be interested in having that discussion as well.
I think those are super important. The local government and hyper-local government is just as equally important, because that's your local representative and what they do. And I know there's so many moms and there's so many followers that we have here that are actually really interested, because they have been tired of the way things have been going. They want to know how to campaign. They want to know all that stuff, but they also want to know what the different positions, how they can make a difference, because I feel a lot of Illinoisans and Americans don't like the way our country has been managed. They don't like the way that the pandemic has been managed, in other issues and in safety and things like that here in Illinois. Many of them they had it up to here, and rightfully so. So yeah, that'd be a great conversation. And next week, I think talking about voter integrity, I mean, this is something you're a well of knowledge in. And, I also believe that Illinoisans should start to trust their elections a little bit more than they have, but they've only heard the national stuff. I have a lot of people come up to me, Dave, saying nothing is getting done. And I'm like, actually, that's not correct. That's not even a fair statement at all. A lot is gotten done and still getting done. So
yeah, no, there has been a lot. There is a lot. There's a lot going on in the background that folks aren't, unfortunately, or maybe it's not time for all that to be finished and be made aware of, but they should be aware of what the efforts are.
Sure.
And in terms of saying trust their elections, let's go with the Ronald Reagan theory of trust but verify.
Sure.
Because each and every citizen has the ability to become a poll watcher or become an election judge and participate in the verification process. We will be looking soon for folks to do canvassing, to track down folks that are that have moved or have died and shouldn't be on the rolls. There's a lot of things that people can do to participate in the verified portion of the trust of the election.
So this would be anyone who's watching this video could actually get involved with this effort at any time and make a huge difference.
Absolutely. Just like we were talking about, each of these offices requires different skills. Everybody has other kinds of skills
Sure.
in terms of what they can do to contribute. Whether, not everybody's going to be in a situation where they can go to court with Mayor Giuliani, but that doesn't mean it's any less valuable for them to knock on a door and say, listen, so-and-so appears to have voted here, but I understand he passed away last year. There's that's something that's needed as well, because the election laws are written in a circumstance that believes there's always an active adversarial system where one party is watching another. That's not always the case, unfortunately. And we can't really trust the government to monitor elections. The people have to be part of the verification process if they're going to legitimately trust it. So we encourage
everybody. Our vote that we're protecting.
That's right.
And we the people need to be. I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat in this conversation. We just need fair elections, and that's going to take everybody to come together. And I believe, was it 80-something% on the polling for voter ID? Because I think everyone's like, I think we're ready for that. And, that would actually be super helpful too. But there may be some people who don't want that because it'll uncover a plethora of problems that have been kept quiet for very long. But the average citizen, you who's watching this video right now, can get involved. There's groups you could get involved with that will give you the tools you need to make a difference. So I would suggest that if you got a little bit of extra time and you want to protect your vote and our vote, to get involved with these people. But Dave, we'll talk more about that next week. I'm sorry, go ahead, finish what you have to say.
Just one quick thing. There's something, of course, the Illinois Conservative Union is heavily involved in voter integrity. Their website is ILPAC, ILPAC.org. And they have a voter integrity tab there that allows you to volunteer or see what volunteer opportunities there are to work with ICU or to get referred to other folks in your neighborhood. So that would be the first place I would have anybody go. And I don't care if they call it Conservative Union. Just like you said, it doesn't matter. Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, Green, whatever. I would like to think every American wants to have free, fair elections, have it easy to vote, hard to cheat, and to count every legal vote. And it would seem to me that crosses party lines, and the Illinois Conservative Union is not doing this for conservative reasons. They're doing it for American reasons. And if you wanted to look to them for an outlet or for direction on how you can help secure our elections, that would be the first place I'd look. And don't hold it against them if you're not conservative. It doesn't matter. You know,
That's
good
yeah,
elections.
that is not the point, Dave. It's the point is all votes that are legal are counted, and that we feel confident, Republican, Democrat, Green, Libertarian, whatever you are, confident in our election systems. And in Illinois, we both know, we're both natives of Illinois here. A lot of people feel Illinois elections are a joke, right? But they don't realize how many people are working to toe the line to actually bring some integrity to them. And the people who are watching can actually be part of that movement. I mean, you know, there's a massive grassroots movement here in Illinois and across the country for better elections. And it's common folks, just like the ones that are watching us, that are they're the ones that are making the difference.
That's right. That's right. Everybody on it. You know, you have a reaching audience. I have a reaching audience. But when it comes to election day, I have one vote. You have one vote, and we can do what we can to motivate people. But it takes an army to monitor these things and make sure that they're fair, accurate, and legal for all of us.
Dave, I appreciate your time. I know you got a busy schedule. I'm going to be out in Ottawa. Are you going to be out in Ottawa later today?
No, I'm not. I am going to the Polish American Congress Christmas party.
Very cool. Very cool.
Polish American Congress Northern Illinois Division, of which they've made me an associate member. They think that I may have some Polish in my background, but at the moment they want me to do some Ancestry.com because Lithuania is very close to Poland. But,
right.
But I'm going to be with the Polish American Congress this afternoon, this evening. I understand Senator Bailey is going to be out in Ottawa and has apparently a major announcement today. We won't try and take his thunder from that and go out and see. But if you're out there, give my best to Beth and Larry Smith. So
I will. I haven't seen Larry for a while, and I'm looking forward to seeing him. I haven't had a chance to speak with him. So since actually the last time you and I and Larry were all together, that's the last time I seen Larry. So I'm looking forward to seeing them. I'm looking forward, as always, to see Senator Bailey and his wife, who's always so sweet. And okay, so next week we are going to talk about Illinois. Well, we'll talk about elections, right? But we're going to talk more specifically Illinois. But some things can't be revealed just yet. But we're going to at least explain some of the stuff that's in the works. And in why you should get involved, how you could get involved. We kind of covered that, but we'll cover it again, right? And
yes.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think a lot of people are going to be excited to watch that one.
I think so too. But in the meantime, study all the what we hit on some offices today. But you should, wherever you're voting, you don't just take the word of the guy that's running for the office that he's qualified for. Take a look yourself at what the office is, and then compare the candidate's skills to that office.
Dave, because we're hiring them. Voters are hiring a person to do a job. That we are the employer, I mean, so to speak, right? And we're hiring them. So we want to know, hey, what's on your application? I don't care what you have to say. You know, these are, like you said, many of these jobs are you have to have different qualifiers, and you know, your philosophies are irrelevant because they're going to have nothing to do with the way they're going to perform the job. It's their skill set in you know, in what's in their, you know, what they've done in their life that matters. So thank you for bringing light to that, Dave. I didn't even think to bring that up, and I'm grateful that you brought that to light so our viewers can kind of reshape their thinking and tell others that, you know, this is how we qualify candidates. And I'm looking forward to next week. I'm sure I'll probably see you sometime during the week because there's never a shortage of political events for both of us to go to.
That's accurate. Take care,
right.
Jack.
You have a great day, sir.
Audience as well. Thanks.